In this lesson, we'll create the heads for the engine. Alright, so the pieces that we're talking about creating here are going to be these pieces right up here with these cooling fins. And this, you can see, is a little bit more traditional, maybe if you recognize this from an engine, as far as these going in this direction, these fins traveling in this direction, because this cylinder is actually pointed up like this. Okay, so it takes advantage of the airflow. Now, as this is turned, this is an L-twin, this is turned, so the fins are turned as well. So this one, you can see the fins are going in the same direction as these. So it's a little bit different. So, but we can use the same technique to build these, and we're going to use something that's maybe a little bit different to build these in this case. You could go in and take a cube and extrude out rows of detail in there to create that, but we're going to use something a little bit different. So let's go up to create, and instead of creating a standard primitive, let's go ahead and create an extended primitive, and let's choose a hose. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just draw this out from the perspective, or from the top, kind of a top view there, and pull that up. Okay, and this is what we get initially. If we go into our perspective here, this is what we end up with initially. So let's go ahead and change some of these settings. Okay, we've got the nice little sort of fluting in there, but I want to go ahead and change this up. Now this is a cool kind of object that you can actually attach to different objects, and it'll flex and stuff, but we're going to use it strictly to create some geometry. So we're not going to worry about any of this binding or any of that. Okay, let's go ahead and take off this actually leave that flex section on, and what we want to turn off is the round hose, and we want to change that to rectangular hose. Okay, turn on our edged faces there. Alright, and let's go ahead, and we don't want this to be completely squared off, so we want to have a little bit of a fillet in there, so we'll go ahead and dial that up just a little bit. So you get something like that. Okay, we can also change the height right up here, so we can go ahead and dial that in. So let's go ahead and kind of put this into position before we start to kind of match those settings up. So I'm going to go ahead and just put this in kind of right in here. Okay, kind of scale it down a little bit, and we can kind of move it over and rotate it. And there's kind of two sections, this kind of metal section and then kind of a black section in there. So we'll go and create this section first. Again, just kind of rotate that into position. And now let's go ahead and change up some of the settings here. Okay, so I want to go ahead and increase the number that I've got there. I also want to go ahead and take the height up to beyond that cover. Okay, let's go ahead and dial the number of cycles up, something fairly high. Okay, we can also dial in the number of segments that we've got there. We've got 16, so let's do something like 64 on the segments. Okay, and we can change our fillet down here. If we want to dial that up a little bit, knock those edges off. Okay, and then let's dial up the number of fillet segments as well. Something like 2. Okay, you can also make a D section with that. It's renderable. Change our smoothing. You can change the diameter. You can see that. So there's a lot of different settings that you can play with here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and widen it up a bit in this direction. And we'll go ahead and move that over. So even though this doesn't match up exactly maybe with what we want, it's pretty good, and especially with the amount of work that we did. Okay, we could go in and extrude those out, and that would just take a little bit longer. So if you want to do that, you can, but this is just another way to go ahead and create something like this very quickly. We can go ahead and just duplicate this over, make a copy of that, pull it down, and there you've got your other copy. for this top one, we can go ahead and look at maybe another different way of doing this. And so that would be the cube that we talked about. So you could just draw out a box. Okay, give just something like that. Give a little bit of width. Okay, let's go ahead and pull this out. Okay, so let's go ahead and now change our length and width just a little bit. Okay, and I'll just give you an example. Would be to up our height segments. Sorry, in this case it's our length segments. We'd go ahead and raise those quite a bit. Okay, so you end up with something like that. And then you go around and select all of these individual kind of loops of polygons. So we'd convert that to an editable poly. Okay. And then we go ahead and isolate this. And now let me go ahead and select all of these. Alright, so once we've got all of these alternating rows selected, we could then go in and inset those just slightly. Go ahead and take that down just to kind of give us a hard edge there. Okay, go ahead and extrude those out by local normal. Okay, something like that. Let's say OK to that. Then go ahead and inset that once again. And then when you take this and smooth it, then you get something like that. Okay, and then you could go in and use your deformers if you needed to shape that at all. You could come in and shape it using either something like that. You could squeeze it together a little bit and do a lot of things. So this is maybe a little bit more accurate and maybe a more exacting way to do it, but not as quick. So just a couple of different ways that you can add those. So you could use this way to go ahead and add the pieces up here on the top. So we could go ahead and take this and just drop it into position here. And let me exit isolate here. Go ahead and drop that into position behind using the image of the engine that we have. Go ahead and drop that behind there. And then add another one on top of that. Okay, so you can kind of compare those and see, you can see that we've got a little bit more detail around the sides of that than we do on these. Okay, and then you could just clone that and create the top. So if we take a look at this, you can see we've got 1, 2. Okay, so maybe that's the bottom one, and then maybe we can copy it up here. Alright, so just go ahead and place those, and you can see that our vents are going in the same sort of direction on both of these. Okay, just a couple of different ways, one using a hose, one using just some straight polygonal techniques of doing some extruding and selecting. So in the next lesson, let's go ahead now and create the sort of the valve covers. So this stuff right out here and then right up here as well. So we'll go ahead and I'll just place those pieces that I just created in there, and then we'll go ahead and work on those in the next lesson.